Good morning. Hi, it's
Hey.
Maria Quattrone, and I'm with Remax at Home. And so my show today, Be the Solution, with my friend, coach, mentor, um, Jay Doran, who is the CEO of Culture Matters. Welcome, Jay.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited. We're up early.
No, we're up always at this time, aren't we?
Yeah. This morning I did get up early. I've been reading and I took a bath. I feel good. I'm ready. I'm clean for you.
You took a bath?
Yeah, I was reading in the bath.
Like a bathtub?
Yeah, bathtub. I take a bath probably twice a day.
An actual bath where you sit in the tub?
Yeah, and I read a book.
I did not know this about you.
Hot water. It's real hot, like burning, scalding.
How long do you sit?
I just let it run.
How long do you sit
in this building where it just keeps, it won't overflow, maybe for risks, of death.
How long do you sit in the bath for?
Maybe an hour.
An hour? Twice a day?
Yeah, at least.
So 2 hours a day, you're in the tub.
At the most, I'll say.
Okay. 2 hours a day?
Reading.
Is that how you're being the solution?
It's part of it. I think that's that's part of our responsibility as citizens of a democratic republic to be able to think for ourselves. I'm going to do that. And then that just so happens to help in business to think, because that's our role in relation to our customers, to be the solution to solve their problem, whatever it is.
So how are you making out during all this, Jay? Are you healthy? You feel good? Your family good?
I just talked to my mother yesterday. She's inside. She lives in like this maybe like they have a certain age, where people above a certain age live together in an apartment type complex. So they're not letting anybody leave it, from my understanding. So, they're on lockdown. But yeah, she's healthy. Although I did call her yesterday and she answered the phone while she was coughing. Like,
oh,
it's like that, Ma, don't answer the phone that way. You're freaking me out.
Did she scare you?
Yeah, she just had like a sniffle, right? But yes, we're good. I mean, yes, a little bit stir crazy for sure. Being in the house so much.
Yeah. Do you find some days you're totally fine and you're totally into your business and reading and helping people, and then other days you're like panicked a little bit?
With or without a external catastrophe like the coronavirus, that's a normal occurrence in life, right? Between anxiety and hope, and it's our responsibility to work through our emotions as they come up. So it could be a clear sunny day with no calamities in sight, and I'm going to be fighting myself, whether it's in the bathtub or whatever. It's just, normally I'm going to be fighting to stay positive on the future, to work through my own emotional and internal conflicts as I face the day, because all the day is problems. That's what makes our success, is being able to work through those problems. So yeah, like that's all the time. I mean, it could be with or without coronavirus.
Thank you for saying that. Yesterday I had a tough day. And then I didn't sleep last night. Did you hear the construction on the highway? It started around 11 something, and then I don't know, around 2:30 it finally stopped. Did you hear that?
No.
Like from our house to 21st and Catherine, I heard it. Anyway, that's not why I had a bad day, but I had a bad day for, I don't know, no reason. And now that I think about what you just said, what I heard you say was that we have those days anyway, and it's not about coronavirus, COVID-19. It could maybe be that a little bit, but we already experienced that, because I just think, yeah, I've had bad days before yesterday when there was no COVID-19. So it's really an interesting perspective of looking at it, because that's very true. And I think we kind of I only can use myself, but I think I kind of forgot about the fact that there are good days and bad days, and the sun doesn't come out, and well, we don't see it shining anyway, and
Yeah.
it's raining, and then it's a beautiful morning, right? This morning. So,
Well, what would life be like if that wasn't the case?
we wouldn't know the difference between good and not good.
It would be mundane, meaningless. It would be something we couldn't even perceive because it's never been that way ever. Now, when you compare your normal life, like normal life, to an external calamity like this, it would seem greatly different. However, this is just exacerbating our emotions that we generally or that we already have every single day. Like if you're an entrepreneur, even if you're an employee, you work with an entrepreneur. If you're an employee in relation to the entrepreneur, you're the entrepreneur in relation to the customer that you serve, that the entrepreneur, your boss, is not serving, which means you're going to face conflicts every single moment, every single opportunity to have a conversation with someone, whether they're a current customer or about to be a customer. You're going to face conflicts, whether you're the employee or you're the entrepreneur, whether you're the child or the parent. All of us face conflicts. That's what life is. It's a constant battle. And the question is, are we going to, win it without losing ourselves? Get to the end of our life and say, this was great. And I didn't treat everyone around me like they were meaningless and not void of love. So yeah, nothing really changed. Every day I have to wake up and say, do I want to take this seriously, or do I want to make, do I want to like sink in my own filth, my own fears and my own resentments?
And what are you doing?
Well, I got up this morning, I listened to a book, got in the bath, I was reading. I feel pretty good. I'm excited to do this because, we're having a conversation in front of who knows who. Like, what a beautiful thing. We could be who we are while other people watch. Like, what a great way to be able to grow, because based on what the feedback is, we can learn more about ourselves. So I just love the opportunity to be here with you and be the solution, more than just saying it, but actually doing it, because I would liken this to actually being the solution by putting oneself out there naked, metaphorically, and just talking, sharing what's on our mind. It's awesome.
A month ago, if you said I would be doing these every day, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube lives, I wouldn't have believed you.
How many have you done?
We're doing one a day, Monday to Friday. Last week, I think we did 4 because I had a family emergency. As you know, my great uncle passed. So actually it was the day we were supposed to do ours. And I found out at like 11:30 and we were supposed to go on at 11:50. So I had to cancel that, or not cancel, postpone.
Yeah.
I wasn't mentally, physically up to having a conversation at that point in time. I was sad and crying and very upset and talking to family and everything. So, but I'm excited to talk with you today. I'm excited to learn about what you've been doing and how, has this changed anything that you've already been doing? Are you doing things differently?
Yeah, well, if I have the choice, I will physically want to meet clients in person. So that's normally a thing, but with technology, we can do everything virtually, which is just as enjoyable, or actually it is. I would argue, depending on how honest we are with ourselves and how honest we are with our counterparts, there is a very small difference to be in person or online.
Well, you and I spoke and we talked about how the world was already virtually, because we have this little thing here called our phone, and we take it with us everywhere. And we check in, text, Slack. We Slack all day long at my company. It's text, Slack, email. What's going on LinkedIn, Facebook? I mean, we've been connected that way for a long time. So now this just brings it to the forefront, and
Yeah, well, think about it. If we weren't already living in a virtual world more than we were prior, more than we are aware of it. If we weren't already living in a virtual world by our actions, not what we think, then we wouldn't have acclimated so quickly to just holding our meetings online, working from online, figuring things out.
So
We've been living in a virtual world much longer than we really are aware. And when I say we, our business culture, our culture.
could you imagine if this was 2008 and not 2020?
Yeah, I think it would be vastly different. It would be vastly different.
I mean, we're so lucky, right? Because we can Zoom everybody. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of looking at myself on Zoom.
Yeah, no, I could get used to it.
Oh, really?
So it's interesting because all right, number one, right now is weird for me in the moment because I'm so used to interviewing people. So this is exciting for me because I do so few interviews where I'm being interviewed. That discomfort is an opportunity for me to grow. Now, the reason that I'm not looking at me, that question is hard for me to answer because I'm so used to looking at the other person in their eyes, in their face, and getting inside of their head consciously, and then now that I'm not even seeing myself on the camera. But I like me. I could get used to that, but I haven't even looked at I haven't, and I so
well, I'm used to going to the hairdresser every 2 weeks, so I have my own little set of my own little personal trauma with the hair.
Oh yeah, I'm almost
being silly, Jay. I don't know. I mean, it's like crazy. It's like
great.
But
what has been like something that you learned from doing all these interviews if you did one every day?
Jay, I have been listening to people, and sometimes it's really hard because we have the natural inclination to just talk, ask questions, but we're not asking the right questions, and we're asking questions that we came up with. So I have to, everybody that I am interviewing, I tell them there's no questions. I don't have any questions I'm going to ask you. We're going to have a conversation about you and your business and your life and how you are being the solution and how you can bring the solution to others around you. And so I can't formulate questions like, how many books did you read, Jay? Because if I ask that right now, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
What do you mean?
If I just asked you random questions in between the conversation that we're having,
yeah,
it would be non-authentic and weird. It wouldn't have the flow. So the interviews are, so I have to pay very, very, very close attention, and it takes a lot of energy. And you know this because you've interviewed, I think, 250 people. How many?
Brad last week was 225.
Okay.
Rather than stress the number, I'll stress the qualitative process of it. Is that yes, every single conversation, the intention is to understand the person at every level that I can and actually act out the purpose of Culture Matters, which is to uncover their genius with the goal to make curiosity cool. Like that's what I'll say every time I introduce.
I love that.
So that's what I'm doing live, is bringing out the best of them to and the axiom that stands on, the philosophical foundation is to learn, to listen, to hear what is unsaid, right? To uncover their genius with the goal to make curiosity cool. And it translates, if you let it, to all relationships. It will make an individual a stronger leader, a stronger spouse, a stronger parent, a stronger business owner, a stronger employee, a stronger individual, which is good. Yeah. Being the solution. I love that. It aligns with that. You're going to be the solution if you're able to do that. So I've spent majority of my life prior to the interest in learning what listening even it means, and what thinking it even is, and what culture even is, spent the majority of my life needing to be heard. And so, of course, every conversation I had, I would be talking first, and a lot, and interrupting and overwhelming all constituents out of my own lack of awareness and my own insecurity. And that didn't work out well, although, at least definitely not personally. I would argue, and I was a good case study for this. If you get really good at something and you do it enough, and you do develop over time that platform, you could even get paid to hear yourself talk, and people will be excited about what you're saying. And that really can be a prison. So I realized that I want to avoid that destiny, and avoid the irony of being the teacher that isn't a student. Meaning, if I'm not listening, I'm not a student. Therefore, I'm an ironic teacher that is not going to continue to learn and only be a product of my own dogma, which is a meaningless existence. So that's where that realization, and there's many layered realizations. I like wake up one day like, oh, that's it. It's been a very developed process of doing all of these things that I talk about: reading to think, writing to develop, listening to hear what is unsaid, and speaking to let go. But it didn't start in that order whatsoever. Most of my life was spent reading to think. Well, originally, actually, speaking to let go. Very young age, I was that young child that was sharing things with others as a way to feel valuable. And the feedback loop that I got was, you're valuable, not vocally from my constituents. And I'm talking about early adolescence, but kids wanting to be around me because I was motivated. So I started with the speaking thing. Didn't align with formal education whatsoever, much of an outlier in that regard. Didn't start reading till my early, like late teens, not 18, 19. And then the reading and the speak, you do enough reading and thinking, you start developing an ideology, you're speaking enough, you can really become a powerful person to others. And that is actually can be a really, like I said, a cage, because you're not listening. So there's no meaning there. The writing came after so speaking and then reading. The writing came way later, after my, when I was in that ATV conflict. And I started writing when my arm was like, I had permanent nerve damage.
That was the turning point, Jay, wasn't it, for you? When you awoke?
What? So no.
Awoke from.
It was not the turning point, because one could look at it at face value and say that's the turning point. That would be a short-sighted expounding of what was it like. That would be a short-sighted understanding of what was, because my entire life has been dedicated from the very earliest of age to understanding who I am in this world, to understanding what my value is in this world, having not accepted my family's love young, pushed everybody away. Like, my entire life was focused on understanding myself and understanding the world. And as I became more and more educated, that just compounded and compounded and compounded. Now, when you juxtapose that crazy amount of insecurity with a hell of a lot of knowledge, that can become, like I said, a cage, because now you have things to say and people want to hear them, and now you can even get paid to do that. So that's a meaningless pursuit. But I'm saying, but to say that one incident was a turning point would be a negation of what I've dedicated my entire existence to, which is open, curious reflection of how can I do this better and be better in this. So I'll give you an example. When that car crushed my arm, in that moment, after 10 years of working very hard on myself, that prepared me to even say, hey, is everybody all right? Like, it's all good. We're going to be good. Like, let's just get to the hospital and get back in that car and drive. So I was prepared for that to occur. That at that moment, I could have just, if I hadn't done all those things prior to, just
right. Well, you're
destroyed. Even physically, my body, as 230 pounds of muscle at the time, that would increase the likelihood that my arm would even would even be existent because, you know, that vehicle was so heavy. So like there's so much. So yes, was that an exciting, am I grateful for the opportunity to be physically crushed? Yes. That's easy to say after the fact though. And it would be a negation of all of the work that I did. And it would be and I believe the reason I'm so adamant about this point is that people watching, and even me as the individual, it's easy for us to say that like this one thing was it.
No.
As a way of subconsciously avoiding our own responsibility. And I would not want anyone to think that, because that would be a contradiction of everything I stand for.
Yeah. No, and I understand that. I think that a lot of times if you think back, I think back, people will say, well, why are you so great at sales or whatever? And when I got into real estate, and I would say, well, it wasn't because of real estate. It was because of the 35 years before that happened, right? Everything leads up to preparing you for what is next to come. I mean, all the things that you've done in your life, haven't they prepared you for where you are today, where we all are as a society? Because you're being the solution. You have a great positive attitude. It could have been the other way, right? Your future's in your past. That saying. It's everything that you've already done, all that work. I love the stories of when you had the gym and what you did with all the guys at the gym and how you had them all motivated. And that was very early on in your career.
Yeah. Yeah. And even at that point, I was still the embodiment of what I do today to help others overcome. I was still an individual that lied to myself. My entire life was a lie. Although I could harness all of that insecurity through my curiosity to be valuable for other people, to inspire them. I was the one that needed the most inspiring. It's almost like being a clown or a comedian. And the awareness between the two is very important. If the individual that has the positional credibility to be the authority, to be aware that they are the clown, metaphorically. And at the time I wasn't. So of course, much more chaos was in chaos that I wasn't able to work through and overcome internally was bound to occur.
Well, that was the external chaos that happened, right?
Well, so that circles back to earlier in the conversation, right? We're talking about how have things changed, or have they changed, and am I up or down based on what's going on? It's like life is going to be up or down internally of any individual based on how they interact with others and the world in relation to everything that is going on. And now externally, there will always be conflict because the world is constantly in flux, constantly moving. There's constantly people perceiving you as this and saying this and doing that. And so my main interest in the world, like my main interest of study and what has worked extraordinarily, is the focus on the individuals interacting with others in the world as they go through the world. There's always an external conflict. External conflict is what is the impetus for a business. It's the external conflict of the marketplace not having a solution to a problem that creates the opportunity for the visionary, which is the liar that lies to themselves. Traditional liars just lie to everyone else. The visionary that lies to themselves to create their solution in their head of what their business is going to be first. So it's through external conflict in the marketplace that creates the opportunity for a business to even exist. And that's created through the mind of the business founder, through their own internal conflict that gives them the energy to strive and solve that problem for other people, right? Their first customers. It's like this is life. This is life. And I do not believe I was handling life in a responsible manner for my entire life. That's where my interest is, consciously now, but subconsciously, I was always interested in it because I was not clear on who I was. And I'm talking about like as a very young adolescent. Who am I? And I'm just giving some context for everyone watching this. I was adopted. And I was, who am I? What am I? Attempting to figure that out. So people ask me, when did Culture Matter start? I believe it had different starts. Adolescence. When yes, I was a partner, a mentee, and my mentor was the main thought leader in that business in a physical retail shop after having been in the fitness industry for 5 or 6 years. And yes, I was inspired in that business that culture was important because of how our values and our meetings had a perceivable positive effect on the business and on my personal life. So I said, I want to learn this topic. I'm going to dedicate my life and my time to this topic. And that was the beginning of the serious academic study of it on my own time, my own terms. But I'm answering a bunch of layered questions there, but that, by no means anyone think for a second that anything really has changed in, of their own life. Of course. Yeah. So I'll just leave it at that for now.
That's a lot.
These interviews. This is good practice.
That's a lot to unpack, Jay.
Yeah. Well, that's what my main insecurity in life is, that I've always had a lot that could be unpacked and feel like no one knows what the hell I'm talking about. So I would create more and more layers surrounding me, almost like to dumb myself down. Like I was a model, I was a bodybuilder. I would do anything I could to gain the satisfaction without alienating other people. However, that is irresponsible. And through my work, like I talk about, like 30 Days of Thought, for example, to read, to think, to write, to develop, interviewing people, listen to hear what was unsaid, speak to let go. Through this focus, that has helped me become more responsible as an individual. And that is, if one were to say I'm special for the reason that I'm doing it, I'll accept that. It is also possible for every person to do that, right? To think.
How did they get started to do something like that, Jay? Because for what you're saying now, you and I talk a lot, and I've heard what you've said many times. And every time we talk about this, I learn something new. So, but what about the regular person that doesn't hear you talk all the time? What are some like basic things that they can do to start to learn who they are and become open and become aware? Do you have any suggestions?
We will learn who we are when we ask questions and listen to those closest to us in our lives. The family member, the ex-friend that we have resentments for. Those are the people we have to lean in, be honest, work through and overcome whatever it is that comes back to us from what we had said to them, and ask questions. We're going to learn about ourselves through other people. So like when I started interviewing people, like I did a podcast let's go back. I did in-person interviews because I knew I was an atrocious listener. My whole life was about me and only me. Now, not to negate the importance of our lives being about us, our lives about us and the constituents therein, but the order was messed up because it was only me. Now, I wasn't aware of that because my intention was to help people. But I started interviewing people, and anyone can listen to those closest to them. Just because it's on video doesn't make it something one could not do. That's just the medium. It's different. There's an additional medium. There's a video on. If you take the video away, I'm having a conversation. Forget this camera. It's on live, whatever, whoever. Right now, I'm talking to you. I'm not looking at who's here.
We're having tea.
We're having tea. So the medium is we're having a conversation. So something practical anyone could do is when having conversation with people in their lives, don't have a script in the sense of your agenda, your emotions that prop up when something is said that you feel uncomfortable with. Don't omit how you feel. Don't label them and walk away. Don't yell at them and do all the things that we're inclined to do. Or if you do those things, that's okay, because you actually can go back and still talk to them. Like, life is not over. It's not a game where like, oh, you failed, game over, and then you're done. No, you could actually go back and have the conversation. So remember, when I say don't, it's like we're gonna. However, we have an opportunity to continue to grow through conversation. So that, so have a conversation, ask questions. When they answer, ask questions based on what they said, not based on what you're still thinking. Like, these are human, I'm talking about human activities that, yes, when you acclimate them to business, the business will have less turnover, more productivity, more profit, and a stronger brand presence, and all the things that all business owners want. But in actual life, it's very practical. That's one thing. So here's an example. 30 Days of Thought can be done with any book. It's an idea. When you read a book, any book, Maria, name a book.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Oh, that's a good, I like that author. He wrote, it's not what you say, it's what you do, culture or something like that. Ben Horowitz. Anyway.
Ben Horowitz. Yeah.
Yeah, great. When one is reading that book, you're reading a page. That what's on that page is not his thought per se. It's the excrement of his thought. Meaning there was a whole process that occurred that's not on that page that left that. So don't just memorize what he's saying. Look at it and pick it apart and question it. I recommend write it, or that's called critical thinking. Now, if I had been playing nice in school, I may have learned that, but I didn't play nice in school. Yeah. So that you can critically think in any text and get a way more out of it than just reading the page. All right, that's what I'm supposed to do. Or, oh, I don't like the way that sounds. Let me throw this book away. Read to think. Write your thoughts down, because the value from that is you're going to leave that book and you're going to still have to deal with you. So you want to be worse or better. If you look at the book and you read the page and you idolize what the author said, now you're their worshiper. Now you have not thought whatsoever, my friends. I'm not interested in followers that don't think for themselves.
Mm.
So, and that's like an oxymoron, because if they think for themselves, they won't be followers. And that's a whole other conversation that I'd love to have. How long we got? 2-3 hours? Just kidding. So you read the page, you're questioning, what does this mean? You're writing that down. You could do that with any book. Now I recommend, because we are living in a virtual world and we have been for some time, meaning, yeah, do you check your email in the morning? Okay, then you live in a virtual world, because that phone is a part of your frontal cortex. It's a part of your business, part of your life. Do you bring your phone to social gatherings? Oh, then you may have been practicing social distancing for years because you're on your phone, not talking to your aunt. So when you go, my recommendation, what you write down, that is funny, because it's, rituals of comedy bring out the truth. So it's like, are we going to laugh or are we going to cry? That's what comedy actually does. That's why as soon as comedy becomes too politically correct to do, very dangerous for a culture. Anyway, I digress. So my point is, one of them, you write down your thoughts. Now we live in a virtual world and we can actually attract people that like all sorts of people, are people that could give us feedback. Like, one may call them a hater, which is another fabrication of man, or people that say, hey, I see what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. Meaning you attract people to you if you put out who you are. So film a video about it, but don't just put the video out there. Watch the video of yourself to catch yourself in your own contradictions, which will increase your awareness. That's something an influential person that's something that would lead to someone being an influential person. Now, what is an influential person? An influential person is a good parent, spouse, a citizen of the world, and would be a damn good employee or employer. It's a human conversation. An influencer would be someone that has attention. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in it. So these are things anybody can do. So like the idea of 30 days of thought, that can be done with any book. Read it, think, write your thoughts down, put out your voice. Even if you don't put it out to the world, which I recommend, because when you get feedback, you can grow faster, especially through those that criticize. Especially through those that criticize. Those are your allies in the world because they help you look at yourself, your ugly, ugly self, metaphorically, what you can molt and shed away and overcome and work through. So, although I do recommend 30 days of thought for people because, well, I've made it easy for someone to be able to do this, but that idea right, is for anything. Hard things. Good example.
It's a really good book, your book, 30 Days of Thought. In fact, it's more than 30 thoughts, though. How many? 100?
Yeah, day 107 I have to do right after. I'm going to do it right after this. There's about 110 or so excerpts, meaning like, I'll show you an example. Like the final hour, right? That's a page. So you'll read that page to think your own thoughts right in the book. Disagree. Share it. I'd like to learn by unlearning what I've written, right? I'm reading and I'm like, oh, I disagree with all of that. Let's leave it there because the story's better. This is a tool for people to think. Okay, so after interviewing 225 extraordinary business owners, now not all of them, they're all on different levels, right? And that is the way it will always be, right? So because that's a whole nother conversation, but all different people. I'll just digress. What I have found is the ones that were at the top of their field. If anyone wants to check out the Culture Matters podcast, there's like 43 episodes on there. And then on YouTube, there's over 100 and some on, but there's on YouTube, Jay Doran. It is one, and I don't have this written out yet in a text or like a breakdown. It's very clear in those interviews, and they're deep conversations. They're not short. Yeah. That the individuals at the top of their fields, whether they're aware of it or not, they are fantastic critical thinkers. They question things. They don't just take action. They question things, even if they're not aware how artfully they question, meaning many of them have not been educated formally. So they may think that they're not educated, but the educated man or woman thinks, questions, therefore they think, so they are educated. Because that's what, at bottom, education represents, is the answer lie within, based on our interpretation of the world. We ask questions, we perceive what could be, like possibilities. We act out those possibilities, meaning we take what we would call risks culturally, and we get returns on energy and investment on those. So the huge, like every single person that I'm saying at the top of their field, they were very thoughtful people. Now I do not believe that's a coincidence whatsoever. I believe that there's libraries full of information on that, on the biology and neuropsychology of the human condition that shows that how important it is to think. And this is not a conversation, I want to be clear about this, about IQ and intelligence. It's a conversation about curiosity, empathy, action.
Do any of these people have any other common traits, Jay? Because they're all different levels. So you might have a CEO of a $1 billion company, or the CEO of a $10 million company, or a $2 million company, or whatever. Is there anything that they all, outside of those three things, also have in common?
Insecurity and they do not, under any certain circumstance, stop working towards whatever it is that they had in their mind. So also, people that, so I'm putting quotation, the levels that are there, those are, you know, it's a linguistic representation of our perceivable bias of value towards an individual. Meaning there are individuals that are not nearly as externally successful that have attributes that if they shared them with the individual that was perceivably more successful, that individual would, by any standard, be more successful in the sense of, right, what's success actually, right? That very obscure word that we throw around, right?
Right. Well, it doesn't mean even that they're successful like the other people, right? Because what does that mean? If you run this company that's $100 million, but yet you're negative every year, is that success?
Yeah. So what we have to do, anytime
success.
We have to define the terms, but I'll go just based on like the general
different levels of people.
I'm going to go based on the general unspoken terms of success, which is the development of an idea into a material construct, a company that serves people, like all its constituents, the customers and the employees. Like I said, insecurity, meaning there was lack of something that led to the interest in something. So the lack of something externally, which also created a perception of the internal lack of. Those are key. And it doesn't matter. This is, all of us share this, but I have observed that not from theory, but from listening. Right. So that, now, insecurity, both external, internal, commitment, like the activity that never stopped, meaning someone can work at something for 30 years and have a heck of a lot less of all the attributes we talk about than someone that does 10 years and stops. So the individuals that do not give up. Okay. Now, what I've noticed that decreases the likelihood of them giving up, very importantly, is their interpersonal relationships. Individuals in their lives that would be considered mentors and mentees. Every mentor has mentees and has mentors. And every mentee is a mentor and has mentees. If that's lacking, what you'll see is a stultification of their potential, meaning they'll get to a certain point and then they stay there. And actually, if, like, let's say the individual, no matter how perceivably successful they are, a billionaire, if they don't have mentees and mentors, they stay at $1 billion. The ones that have mentees and mentors go to 2 billion. A natural occurrence in the capitalistic construct is for the individual that started out of insecurity externally and internally, developed through activity, learned knowledge, very competent, very, like I said, critical thinking, whether they're aware of it or not, very competent because they learned what they had to do. They learned through the world. They learned through other source stimulus. That's all different, but they had a capacity to learn and get real good. And by the time they get to the top of that mountain, if they only have mentees, they're going to stay on that mountain and it'll be very cold and they'll die of pneumonia. It's the ones that had mentors and mentees forever that show the most promise and continue to become. Right? But that's more of a minority than a majority. Many don't have mentors. So I become their mentor a lot of the time. People need to learn by unlearning. And to unlearn, we have to have an underlying philosophy, right? Which is presupposed by openness to it. Like it become a very rarity in our culture. So that's the short answer.
That's the short answer.
That's the shortest answer I could drum up.
Oh boy. How does somebody find they want to find a mentor? Somebody that's, you know, maybe been in the business for a business for maybe 5 to 10 years and they don't have somebody. What are some recommendations that you would make? Should they get a coach? You know, should they
Everything I'm talking about is the prerequisite, because if they go immediately to get the coach, that individual is more likely to be someone that they just fully admire and dogmatically attribute all their success to based on what they just listened to. It's like there's a difference between silent or listening and understanding. A correlate to understand, silence and then speaking after one talks infers understanding. It doesn't prove listening. The listening process evokes thinking and it's a path that one goes with another. So if an individual, you know, is asking the question, how do I find a mentor? The question is self-defeating, because that individual must be open in the first place. And that won't necessarily be attributed to them finding someone that they believe is better than them for whatever reasons they describe. So everything that I've already talked about would increase the likelihood of an individual attracting a positive protagonist, quote unquote, mentor in their life. An individual that they can converse with, ask questions with, and learn about the world with.
Mm.
Yeah. And also, because put it this way, if the mentee, if anyone listening to this is seeking a mentor and they are not able to ask questions because they're not open and aware that they're not open, they're most, so it's hard, you know, finite, right? The likelihood that they're going to attract antagonistic pseudo parental archetypes is extremely high. Now, that doesn't mean they won't learn about the world through that experience. However, that experience will be less valuable to them. So everything that I've already talked about will position someone to attract the most meaningful experience with whatever mentors and mentees and collaboratees, if that's even a word, collaborators that they bring in their life. So, yeah.
Well, that's like masterminding, right? Having collab.
Yeah. A lot of it's interesting. So this is the thing. If we are unable to interact with people in a way that is constructively critical, if we have a conversation with someone where we're unable to work through and overcome our emotions as we communicate with them what we believe to be true and what they believe to be true, then the creative process of growth for either party is nullified. It is not going to happen. So if you have a mastermind where everyone's in the mastermind that prescribes to the same doctrine as all of the same master, it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be anything other than pseudo love and belonging. Like, oh, we're all in the same group. The mastermind is made when the people in the mastermind are able to openly discourse, empathetically, curiously, honestly, without ripping each other's heads off. So it's a very important, this goes back to the social distancing thing. You'd be social distancing right next to someone physically if you're emotionally and psychologically apart from them. So just because we call it a mastermind doesn't mean we're masterminding. That's important. That's why my interest in my work and the theories that I've created in business are focused on the interaction of the individual in relation to the world and the constituents therein, how they interact through themselves with others to get to the truth, to get to an outcome, to get to an understanding, right? Whether that's taking on a client or leading their employee to an understanding of something. So yeah, the mastermind a lot of the time ends up becoming more of a pseudo AA meeting for personal development junkies to shake hands, kiss babies, and not actually think. Because if everyone's prescribing to the same ideology, then the likelihood of them disagreeing and being able to work through their own emotions is low. So a lot of masterminds are just a bunch of crap. That's the easiest, simplest way to put it. Right? I'm not interested in for you to agree with everything that I say. I'm interested in you asking questions, doubting me, sharing with me where you're from, because I'm a student. I'm no better than you or anyone else if I'm the positional leader. The leadership is expressed through my ability to act and interact with my constituents, both above and below me, hierarchically. And that is one of the main premises of Culture Matters, to avoid tyranny, right? Whether that's a family, company, country, and so on.
I've been in some good ones, mastermind groups, and some not so great ones, and some really fabulous ones. So I think it really depends on the group, the people in the group, how open the people in the group are. If they are, self-learning people. That's been my experience over the last, 15 years being in with different people across the country.
So that brings us to culture. I mean, it depended upon the individual, the founder who had the vision to solution of a problem in the first place, which in essence is the beginning of a business. The profit is the margin in between what it costs to solve the problem and what comes in, but it starts in their vision. So whomever it was that created that ecosystem, that mastermind, the culture hinges on their ability to convey that vision and demonstrate the value system that brings people together, so by which those people could think in a higher capacity, in a more useful capacity, a more meaningful capacity. So yes, it really depends upon the factors that we take for granted, the unforeseen elements of a culture that lead to how individuals interact in a culture. And if none of this is made aware to the leader, and they don't understand these elements, the likelihood that even what is good will become bad is very high, because cultures naturally, they have a life, just like a baby to a grandparent. Cultures blossom in the vision, and they grow through the development of the constituents they're in that solve problems for their customers in the culture, like let's say it's a company, and inevitably what's true becomes false, and it deteriorates over time. And that can be avoided to great lengths with the right intellectual property. Yeah, but not necessarily totally.
So tell us what books you're working on, Jay. I know you're working on a couple books.
Well, the Culture Puzzle, which is at bottom, the deliverable of Culture Matters, is the literal book that I write about and for and through the experience of being a part of the organization I'm working with the owner for a period of time. That the actual book, like a tangible book, like a 30 Days of Thought, developing that theory for John or Mary to be able to understand that process and be able to do that and articulate that on their own to some degree. I'm working on that and a few other books in and around that, because that culture puzzle is only available to owners of companies, and we have a very stringent process for figuring that out. And so, of course, most people, all the people, like this book, 30 Days of Thought, is for all people, right? It's accessible for all people. What it is that I do behind the scenes is not. So I'd like to, and that we're working on, there's 6 books they're each puzzle pieces that come together, and that if an individual went through those 6 with this 7th, they'd have a increase in their awareness that would be impossible to do in a group setting. They'd have to do it alone. That's what I'm working on. Yeah.
That sounds like fun. But
yeah, it's exciting. So like, okay, that external conflict, attempting to work through that, enables me as an individual who's insecure, who doesn't, who, at the bottom of it, I'm in this world, this giant world. And when I'm speaking about me, this is us. We're insecure. We lack external and internal. We're in this giant world. What do we do while we're here? Well, figure out something to aim to, get clear on what you believe and how you want to interact with people, and go do it. Go do that and attempt to do the best that you can in respect to every single conversation you have with every single person you meet. So yeah, that's a big task that we're working on. That through how I interact through that task and with others, my life will have more meaning or it will not. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't wake up in the morning and say, this sucks. This whole thing's ridiculous. Can we just push the exit button? And, that's another one of my messages, that how are we going to have a business culture that is transparent, where ideas blossom and there's opportunity for everyone in the organization to meaningfully pursue their life and their goals and grow through the organizations, if the leaders of the organization, the individuals that are at the top of the hierarchy, are not seen and understood to be as people just like them? Well, they are. So yeah, that's what I'm working on. I mean, there's layers to it, because Culture Matters is not Jay Matters, or I would have called the company Jay Consulting. What I do behind the scenes with companies like yourself and others in the real estate, mortgage, software, personal development, home improvement space, and mortgage space is architect cultures and enable the owners to be responsible and think for themselves. Yes, but Culture Matters as an idea is a large idea, and that idea is based on what I believe, that when people read to think, write to develop, listen to understand, speak to let go, they develop more value for themselves and others. So the purpose is to help people uncover their genius, because the goal is to make curiosity cool. The vision is that human culture is open, curious, and focused on creating the future. So the mission is to read, write, listen, and speak every day. These ideas have helped me be less of an ass and more beneficial to those in my life. It's driven through my own insecurities and interests in myself. And through that selfishness, I can be selfishly selfless by aiding and abetting your business to thrive, among others. And I'm going to continue doing that as I unlearn every day, feeling like I know less and less and less and less as I continue to read and write and listen and so on. And that's, if I'm still espousing this exact belief in 2 years, then I haven't learned anything new.
So it's constantly evolving, and we're constantly changing and growing, and you're constantly developing more ideas based on what's come before.
However, what doesn't change, and what I believe and where my focused interest is how we interact with people through our interaction with ourselves is either meaningful or meaningless. You have an argument with someone and you can work through that with them, or you don't talk to them ever again. The latter, where you don't talk to them ever again, no matter if I achieve that goal or not, that's going to be with me. Like, I'm very interested in the phenomenological experience of activity, of being, and business. So business to me and business culture, I study academia, and I bridge that with business. It's very important. They have to be integrated, just like people have to be integrated in society. Business culture must be integrated in an educational ethos and a curious, or else it just crumbles under its own weight. So digress. Very interested in the interaction. And I believe that the interaction of traditional industrial business culture is contrary to our current humanistic culture that is developing itself in modernity right now. And that's causing extreme issues in our business culture. That's causing even more issues in our national culture and international business culture and so on. So I'm very interested in the interaction. I do not believe I will have different. I think I'm just going to understand it more and more and more and more and more. But we're on to something. And hey, maybe not. But I'm open to that. That's very important.
I'm open to that too. That's why we are being the solution. Jay Doran.
Yeah.
Oh, you gave everybody a lot of information today, and your work is very in-depth and it's very meaningful. So I really appreciate you taking the time out today, this morning, first thing, to share with us some thoughts on leadership and culture and just how to be a better human by listening and learning through yourself and how you interact with other people. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. Just one last thing, can everybody get your book on Amazon or?
Yeah, type in 30, like not 30, but the actual word 30 days of thought. And the Culture Matters podcast is on Apple iTunes, and that I'm very I recommend because other people's stories and live, like yourself, Maria's on there, episode I think 40 or 41 or 39, something like that in the range. When if an individual's listening to this and they subscribe to the Culture Matters podcast and listen to people's stories, they're going to have a great, because it's not me pontificating or explaining my theories. It's me acting out my theories by actually bringing out other people's lives and what they know. So you're going to have a huge plethora of information there and empathetic understanding of humans that are just like you. And then 30 Days of Thought, yes, is a tool for someone to think while building their voice in the world. So yes, those two I would recommend for people.
That's great. I love them both. I actually the other day listened to mine, which was really interesting, and I actually enjoyed it. So it's good to go back and watch your videos and listen to yourself. I know a lot of people don't want to do that. It makes them uncomfortable. But that's how I found anyway, you can grow and learn from what you're saying and doing, whether, subconsciously or consciously. But this has been great today, Jay. Thank you so much. I can't believe we've been talking for just over an hour. I was like, wait, where did the time go?
I have 5 more hours of notes here. I was going to pull them out in 8 minutes.
You're the best. Love you.
All right. Love you too. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Maria. This was fun.